Welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see you. A little bit quiet for a couple of weeks. We've been out and about, meet our fabulous club members in person. We've had Work Human. What an event. And what a great way to come back to see the lovely Julie today. So, for those of you who don't know Julie, and I will let her introduce herself a bit better than I can in a moment. She's doing something really, and if you are worried about keeping your talent and you want to keep your money in your and look after your talent, Julie is your gal. She's got a fabulous strap line, but without me whittering on, I'm going to ask Julie to introduce herself.
Well, thank you, Sam. I'm really excited to be here today and to chat with you and with the audience. So hello, everyone. My name's Julie Thiel. I'm the CEO and founder of Thiel Talent Strategy. And what I focus on is helping professional services firms reduce turnover, improve retention, and grow smarter. So that's my focus. And it's been a lot of fun building a business and helping clients.
Yeah, love your strap line. Well, just share everyone what your strap line is. Awesome.
Oh, what do you mean? Like my
preventing the exodus.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's been fascinating to me because I've worked in high growth companies, and a lot of times we spend a lot of our time and energy focused on recruiting, which is very important. To grow, you definitely need to focus on recruiting. But what I think often gets missed is retention. It's keeping the people you have and making sure you're providing the work experience that's going to lead to people deciding to stay. And there's a cost to that as well. I sat down and kind of did the math, and especially in professional services where there's this direct connection between your staff and billable revenue. And again, it's a reason I'm very passionate. I love professional services for that reason, because there's you keep your talent, you make more money, right? And and you do the math, and for like $75,000 technicians, which is a year technicians, which in professional services, there's usually quite a few people kind of in that low to mid 70s, $80,000 a year range. If you lose about 15 to 16 of those staff members in a year, you've lost $1 million. And I just don't think that most companies are doing that math and looking at the financial impact of turnover. So I'm trying to, that is I'm an evangelist about keeping your people. And when you do that, you do make more money.
That is huge. I mean, it hurts me when it comes out.
Yeah,
I know myself, and it's like, how much have you got to earn to replace that $1 million? Right?
I know. And what's amazing is that in a lot of these, the industries I work with tend to have like analytical introvert experts, a lot of those, right? So a lot of people that are incredibly smart, are certified, or have deep technical skills. And there's an acceptance that turnover is just, table stakes. Like, well, everyone has turnover, so we have turnover. And I just think that is the wrong way to look at it. If in any of these industries where there's IT, accounting, engineering is one that I've worked in a lot most recently. If you can keep your professional engineers, you have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. I mean, hands down. And it's much harder to hire, recruit, and train someone into your internal systems than it is to keep the people that you've already trained. So yeah, it's a big number that I think is invisible to a lot of organizations.
And what really surprises me is particularly when, say, you've got an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
They're so busy. I've worked with them over the years as well. They're so busy kind of, right, we've got to get this level here up to their qualifications, because if we get them up to the next level of qualifications, then we can increase the billing on.
That's right.
On
the rate.
This level here. But actually, you put in a post the other day, and I wrote it down. It's like filling a pub with the drain open.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Right. And It's almost like you could start with that. You're filling the bathtub with the drain open here.
And I'll share with you my personal experience. So, I've been in HR for 30 years. I've had 3 different occasions I've been the head of HR at different companies, different sizes, different industries. And I thought of course, I've been confident. I know how to run HR, right? And I had the experience along my journey where high growth company, really nice culture, doing a lot of the right things. And again, I was part of helping put that in place. And I myself, we were on a growth trajectory. And there was a year where we hired 200 people, most of whom were technical experts. So really challenging to attract and bring in that many people in a year. That was a big growth strategy. And I was so focused on recruiting, I was personally not paying attention to turnover and whether we were retaining people. And when I sat down at the end of the year, I was all excited. 200 people were hired, like high five. That's like an exciting milestone to say that we did that in a year. That was a lot of work. But when I did the math at the end of the year, I was shocked. We had only grown by less than 40 people. So you talk about gut punch. I mean, that was one of those moments. And that's why I feel so strongly about this, because I myself have kind of gotten blinded by the shiny object of growth through recruiting. And you can't do recruiting without focusing on retention. And that, of course, created a whole new focus after realizing that we had netted less than 40 in a year. I mean, that was terrible. It was really bad. And so, by stepping up and looking at retention, and you almost have to go department by department when you're starting to take a look at retention interventions. But by doing that, the next year we had, I was doing the math of, we had to hire that year, we had to almost hire 6 people to grow by 1. Just terrible. And the next year we were less than 3 to grow by 1. And that was a huge, huge improvement. So we still were focusing on recruiting, but recruiting with a focus on retention is the way to go. And again, that bathtub phenomenon of filling the bathtub with the drain open, it is a very real thing. And if you're not paying attention to the numbers, it can happen to anyone, really.
Yeah. And the reason why I think this is so important, particularly now, we're going into the summer,
Yeah.
and people are thinking, hey, kids and graduation and school, and we've got Memorial Weekend coming up, right? We've got all of these things. And now people are looking towards September and hiring. But I'd like to take you back to that situation, the story you just shared with us. What did you do so differently? Because clearly you did.
Sure.
To work on that retention. Were you looking out for different signs? What did you put in place?
There were 2 departments that were really responsible for the majority of the turnover that was driving that. And in both those cases, by doing interventions, we were able to cut their turnover by 50%. So cutting by half is a pretty significant way. The one of the major focus was a couple things. First was communications. And org structure. So the company had grown so much, a lot of leaders had 30 or 40 direct reports, which when you think about from a root cause of turnover, leaders need to have relationships with their staff. That's not possible when the company has grown so big and there's not a great ratio between supervisors and their teams. So we're able to create working lead roles, because again, companies can't always just afford to hire more supervisors either. So practical intervention was creating some leads that were then able to stay connected with people. And sometimes it's just having those personal relationships and regular contact helps you be able to address issues as they come up. So this idea of better communications, better ratios, better relationships made a big difference. In addition, there was not, and I think this happens a lot also in growing companies, there was not a real regular cadence around reviewing people for annual pay increases. And, I've worked in companies that haven't, and I've worked to put that in place pretty much every place I've been, because if people can't rely on being reviewed for a increase on a regular basis, that creates concerns as well. So, it typically is a multifaceted approach. There's never just one silver bullet for retention. You have to look at it through multiple lenses, and those are some of the things we did that ended up reducing turnover by 50%, which was meaningful, really meaningful.
It's huge. And when you kind of look at this time of year, I guess, and going back into recruitment drives,
Mhm.
in the fall towards the end of the year, because it's coming again, right?
Mhm.
We see people look at you made such a good point earlier. We're all looking at the new hires, but what are some of the things that they need to be looking for to keep the good people they've got as they're looking into new season and new hiring season?
Sure. I think you can. I think the things that I like to see in place that give me peace of mind, like that we're doing our part
Yeah.
to keep people, has a lot of it has to do with understanding their individual career goals and objectives. And I really, I mean, my daughter's about to graduate from high school, and I really understand that there's different phases of life that you're in that affect your career. There's earlier in my career, it was all about getting to the next level. And, I wanted to have those conversations about how do I advance? How do I grow? And then there's been a period of time where I've, had to balance work and home. And I think a lot of people run into this where you want to still be advancing, but you want the flexibility to be able to be there for your family and be building a career. So I think it's really important. And I'm in the phase now where it's like my daughter's about to launch. And for me, it's more about having a meaningful impact. Like I want to be able to pass on what I know. I want to have a meaningful impact. And so I think being aware of what life stages your team is in and having those direct conversations about what's their trajectory, what do they want, what is meaningful to them in the workplace. And it's a little bit different for each person. Different people are motivated by different things. And if that investment in a personal relationship with leaders and their teams, in my mind, is like that first layer of defense, so that what's important to someone and you can make sure the company is rising to that if that's possible. So I think career discussions and understanding what motivates your team is a great place to start for any company.
There's also a piece, isn't there, around helping early stage managers. When you look at, say, your daughter's trajectory,
Yeah.
she's potentially about to enter the workforce in the next few years. What she'll want and how she'll want the world to look is going to be very different how we did.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prepare, or what's your advice? So, you're with a lot of small businesses, you're talking to, lots of sized businesses. What's your advice to them when they're saying, well, we've got these line managers here, we promoted them, but actually they promoted them on a technical basis rather than their people skills basis.
Yeah. And what I find is that a lot of the solutions to retention issues have to do with better equipping leaders to be able to build those relationships. Because here's the thing, if you've never had a leader sit down with you and really coach you and engage and have those questions, if it's never been modeled for you, it's really hard to model it for someone else. And that's what I keep finding. And again, I want to be careful because it's like, I think there's a lot of, when you talk about retention and engagement, it's always about the manager. Like everyone's like, well, people leave their managers. They don't leave the company, they leave their managers. And I think that is true, but I'm with you. I'm not convinced all the managers have been given the tools they need. I mean, it's easy to say, well, it's their fault, but is it their fault, or have they just not been given the skills and coaching that they need to be able to to be able to develop people? So I think I think one of the things that I think is important is just leaders need to have a regular cadence of conversations with their team. And that seems so simple, but it's often missed. I mean, our workplaces, leaders are I think getting it from all sides. They're working with clients.
I do.
They have client obligations. They have uh, typically organizational obligations. They have team obligations, and in many cases, they're doing their own work as well. Especially in professional services, they have their own book of business, their own work that they're doing. So you look at that and go, that's hard to manage. That's hard for anyone to manage. And I think an easy place to start is just a regular cadence of conversation, regular one-on-ones. And so those can be, I know I've had periods of time where I've been busy and those have been 15 minutes. I mean, but it's been regular so that there's a regular check-in. Or if you've built a really good relationship, maybe it's monthly. But it's some sort of regular conversation is a great place to start. And then the question is then, what do you talk about? So a lot of leaders don't know what to do when they're in those one-on-ones as well. So a lot of the skills training that I've provided has to do with how do you run a one-on-one? And some of that is about the work, because as a leader, you've got more knowledge and experience. You want to pass on how to better work with clients, do the work, review work together, have working meetings around solving problems. So that's one way you can handle a one-on-one. And then there also needs to be conversation about how the person is doing generally, how are they developing, being in a position to coach and help them. So there's like that personal, and then there's the professional side of working with people on one-on-ones. And again, coaching someone who's got a lot of experience, I've found, is very different. And there's a different approach to doing that than someone who's earlier in their career. You almost have to give people earlier in their career more time than you do someone who's been in the role for a long time and is really established. So there's a lot of coaching and training interventions that leaders typically need to get to the point of confidence where they're confident in a one-on-one and handling the day-to-day things that go on with staff.
And I think what goes through my mind often is assumption. There's the leaders making the assumption that, the person is in the team understands the role because they've had a great onboarding experience, and the person in the team thinks, well, the leader knows what I do. And I remember, unfortunately, we were preparing a team years ago for redundancies and going through outplacement. And the team hadn't been well prepared for an interview process.
Okay.
And one of the most hardworking individuals sat down in front of their line manager, who coached them through and said, but you know what I do. And the line manager had been trained, as had the individual, to, we've got to go through this sequence of questions.
Sure. Yeah.
And the individuals needed to and it was one of those moments, and it stayed with me. It was over 15, 20 years ago.
Sure.
But I remember how crestfallen that line manager, we'd all gone through that training. But at some point when we look back at it, there was a level of assumption that we'd all made.
Sure.
We took that accountability, and I think there's a lot in that, isn't there? That the assumption can be a terrible thing at times.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, and even assuming that, what I've even found is that I think part of leadership is being able to ask good questions, is observing and asking good questions. And you can't assume that someone you've worked with that has been performing and loves the job and loves the work, you can't take for granted that is still the case. You have to continue to almost re-recruit people, re-encourage them, understand their motivations and what's changed as you go. Because I think we've all had times where people on our team have left and we've been shocked. It's like, wait, what? Yeah. You're leaving? And you come to find out that something had changed. And by assuming that that person was comfortable, happy, motivated, you've missed an opportunity to intervene. And so you can't make assumptions on where people are at and what's going on in their lives. It's important to have that constant conversation on some regular basis with people to make sure you know what's motivating them and what matters.
Yeah, and I agree. It was interesting. I thought about this conversation today when I was having one yesterday. So I was approached by just a local company around here, and they're a smaller team, must be just under 20.
Mm-hmm.
Two people were leaving the organization and going to another local competitor because all of a sudden they'd stepped up, they'd increased the pay, made an offer, and I quote, they were given an offer they couldn't refuse.
Okay. Yeah.
It happens, right?
Yeah,
This is all part of the retention piece. How important is it, or how again do leaders leave or open? Because in some instances, it's not a bad thing for people to leave if you can then encourage connected to come back. That's another layer to this, isn't it?
That's right. And I worked for a company that called that the boomerangs, and they actually had almost a what was kind of cute. They often had people leave and then recruited them to come back at a different stage in their career. And even they actually presented boomerangs. They had a ceremony where they would present a boomerang to the individual that had returned. And in some ways, that was the most powerful thing that they could do is have someone say, yeah, I was here, I left, here's the good, the bad, the ugly of where I went. And I decided to come back because this is a great company and great opportunity. So yes, I think there is having some sort of active alumni network is really, especially for technically oriented companies where there's a limited supply of talent, you want to make sure that there is some sort of ongoing dialogue and relationship building happening with people that have left, not only so that you can, I don't know, I think it's just good to kind of keep your eye on the market so that you're still talking to people that have left. How are things going? Tell me about your work. Tell me about your challenges. What do you think of the organization? Really good HR people and recruiters can do that and make sure they stay in touch with people that have left. I think that's an important, it's an often missed area, is this alumni network. But you can, in many cases, fill open positions in the future with people that have left the company. And in fact, when I do succession planning with companies, I like to look external as much as I do internal. So it's smart not only to have people inside the company kind of teed up to potentially step into future leadership roles, but it's also good to canvass the local market, people that have worked for you previously, to identify them. And especially in smaller organizations, you really do need a solid succession plan to make sure that you have a little peace of mind that if someone does leave, you've got a backup, at least a few people identified internally and or externally for those jobs.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you talk about succession planning. It's so often overlooked, isn't it? It's okay, we're going to hire them, then we're going to try and keep them, but there's so much more to it. I love what you were talking about with the alumni piece. And personally, I think alumni are really important. Years ago, I was at Goldman Sachs. There's still an alumni. At Sky TV, there's a small Facebook group of us who still keep in touch. It's a pseudo alumni because we all worked together. And that was over 30 years ago now, so I'm showing my age. Your opinion, your views, what does a good alumni look like, and how should they keep that cohort of people connected to one another as well?
Sure. One of the more innovative companies that I've worked with actually still sends birthday cards and holiday
Oh,
cards to
wow.
alumni. So part of the exit process was identifying, is this someone we want to stay in touch with, and when someone's leaving, so adding them to those lists for since they worked for the company, they knew the birthdays. So continuing with a handful of birthdays or holiday cards was I thought that was a very simple process to add to the exit process. But then they went into almost that client retention work with marketing to make sure that there was still a relationship there, and they were sending good wishes to the people that had left. And those people still then got on all of the different marketing lists for updates on services, updates on newsletters from the organization as well. So I thought that was great. That was a really innovative way and fairly simple way to add to the process.
Oh, exactly. Because there's the other side of this is it's keeping that ex-employee
Mhm.
connected, but it's also maintaining them as for that business.
That's right.
Even though they've left, to be able to say, "Oh, hey, Julie, my old company's hiring. You'd be a great fit. Let me connect manager."
That's right.
Because
Yeah.
it goes back to what you said. I wrote it down because I was like, "Oh my God," like filling a bathtub with the drain open.
Mhm.
You're starting to plug back in, right?
Yeah.
Because
At some
you're,
point.
yeah, in in some ways you'll save the recruitment costs, and that person, if they've left, if they've had a good leaving experience, are more likely to come back at a higher level later as well. So there's a double whammy there, right?
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that, as you were talking about, that just kind of came to me is the one of the other parts of retention that often gets missed is that onboarding, that early experience that people have
Mhm.
coming into the company. And in fact, most engagement surveys are really focused on the existing employee population. What I've found is that focusing on those new hires gives you a lot of really good information on how the retention programs are going. So, what I've often seen is that companies that are struggling with retention um, often have a lot of quick quits, people that leave in the first
Yeah.
year. And there's a lot that can be uncovered when you start looking into that. So, and typically it's a combination. You're not giving people a great realistic preview of what the job is. And I've seen this many times. Leaders get a little desperate sometimes when they're looking to fill a highly technical position, and they'll somewhat, with good intentions, I would believe, oversell the job. And so
Yes.
the poorest person, leaves, comes in, they're excited about the job, and the job is not exactly what was sold. So taking a look at quick quits can really tell you, because if it's not what you sold them, they're probably going to leave. So there's no benefit to overselling the job during the recruiting process. And then on top of that, again, onboarding, people put so much effort into bringing the candidate in, they show up. And if nothing's been planned to help bring them into
Oh,
the work, bring them into the team, that disappointment, you do you're setting yourself up for failure if that's the case. So onboarding oftentimes that early process and quick quits that first year, I think that's often another place where you can find out a lot of really good information. And there's often very simple solutions that help immensely with retention.
yeah. And KJ's made a good point. Regular one
Yeah, hey
to ones
KJ.
employee engagement. Hey,
Hey
KJ.
KJ.
Employee engagement, employee performance, employee trust, and so much more. It also keeps things from being surprises in the
That's
end.
right. That's right. Thank you, KJ.
So true. And the other thing that, as we were talking, springs to mind, and I hear it often, I started this exactly to what you said, I started this job and either it's been oversold,
Mhm.
um, or the other one I've often heard is Tracy's made a good point as well, being more realistic about the challenge helps attract the right type of employee.
That's right.
Thank you, Tracy. Another
Yeah.
great point. But again, you know, and I hear this time and time again, particularly at the moment, which is, well, it's not just that job's been oversold, but it's been, all of a sudden I'm things that wasn't in the job description or job profile that was given to me. I mean, why does
Yeah.
this keep happening?
Yeah. I don't know. I
Seriously.
mean,
And it's not
I
always
think
wrong,
that
right?
it's not wrong. Yeah. I am a big advocate for having one person in the interview process be that realistic preview person, the one that says, based on your background, here are the things that I think you'd like about the job. Here are the things that I find challenging or you might find challenging. And I think there needs to be someone that's having that conversation. Like, for example,
Yeah.
like the civil engineering world, I love that world. I love construction. The fact is in this, especially in a environment like Minnesota, you are working a lot of hours. The hours are compressed. You're trying to get all the work done while the weather's nice before the winter. So the summers are really intense and long hours. And conversely, it's a lot lighter and leaner during the winter months as well. So, you know, making sure that hires that are new to the field or new to those types of roles really need to understand that, and someone needs to spell that out, and that just prevents disappointment later. So so I think those are the types of things. I'm just a big fan of having someone or a peer say, you know, hey, I love doing municipal engineering, but you do need to go to city council meetings. Those are in the evenings on a Tuesday. And just saying, you know, you will miss out on things on Tuesday night because you will be at a city council meeting. That type of honesty, I think, is really appreciated and often missed. And that is how you differentiate, is by giving people confidence that they know not only what they're going to enjoy, but what they're not going to enjoy about any given job. So
Exactly. And Tina, thank you. Yes, good to see you. Yeah, and again, it's something that I think we need to see companies doing more of. And I don't think it's the fact that they're lying. I don't think it's the fact that they're bad. And I know some people who want to, you know, chase the headlines rather than the business. And I think there's a fundamental difference here. And that's around acknowledging the fact that if you're the business owner and you're the one who's done the recruiting and everything else, baby,
yeah,
it's your view of and perspective of the world's going to be different to an employee coming into You've got to go to that municipal meeting every Tuesday night,
exactly.
or once a month on a Tuesday, right? Whatever that might. And for some people, that's going to be, no, I can't do that. I don't want to do it. There's no judgment. That's totally fine. This role isn't for you, right? So I think it's that it really is that gauge, isn't it? It's that gauge between, say, you as a person coming in to be able to manage the HR, to be able to also help that business owner and leader to this is, the risk is all with you. We get it. We're here to help. We've got a team around you who want to help as well. But let's really play to strengths. We keep hearing this. Let's play to. But I think you've just demonstrated the reality of playing to strengths just there, which is let's about this role.
Yeah, and one of the things too that has really struck me as I've been talking to CEOs and founders, they often have started up the company because they have a passion not only around their clients and their product, but they have a very specific passion around the type of workforce and type of culture they want to create. They've either, they know that they want this to be heavy team culture. They want it to be, people to feel like family. They have a feel and kind of a vibe, if you will, on what they want out of culture. And so they're very engaged in it, but there gets to be a point as they're growing where they just can't be as personally involved in it anymore. I mean, at some point they do need someone to come in That's where fractional HR gets really interesting, or, there's different ways to bring in that HR expertise. But, I've talked to leaders who are getting dragged into employee relations issues, dragged into, all sorts of things that, again, I give them credit. They care, they want to be involved, they're deeply engaged. But I just think if a leader's spending more than 20% of their time on HR related topics, that is starting to be too much. Their strengths, go with the strategy, build the business, work with the clients, and make sure that you've got someone that's got some skills and background that can step in and help, especially as you're growing, because growth creates all sorts of different complexities around culture that can be anticipated, but it does change. You want to preserve the secret sauce that made the company so good in the beginning. You want to preserve that, but do it on scale. So, and sometimes getting a thought partner in that can make a big difference as well. So
yeah, and it's I've been there. I've met, and it's the one thing that I remember I saw with one of the companies we built was we started to build and scale quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, those who had been with the organization a long time, of which I was one, I was in a fortunate position that I was a shareholder, so there's never that, I was never at risk, right? But the culture did change slightly, and the job options, there wasn't a clear, if you like, baton change between one role and another.
Sure.
So, people kept bumping up against one another, and through a really tense period where I didn't enjoy working there.
Sure.
And that happens, right?
Oh, sure. And you're not going to love your job all the time. I don't know, just like anything. There are good days and bad days. There are seasons, if you will, where companies are going through changes. And that's why, I think there's a level of self-awareness that senior leaders need to have about what are they experiencing? Where is that coming from? Is it really what's happening, the changes in the organization, or is it something that's happening within them? And trying to really, I think, kind of pinpoint why are you feeling the way you're feeling as a leader? I think there's something to that can be really informative and helpful as companies are starting to grow. So part of my background is in emotional intelligence and I've got certifications. It's a topic I think is really important. And, part of that emotional intelligence is around self-awareness and emotional awareness. Like, because if you're, is it just, and one of the things I would always do, because I've had life ups and downs too. And it's particularly when I was going through divorce and I was in a leadership position, I would just, not everybody's comfortable being this honest, but I was just like, you know what, I am not myself. I'm going through divorce. I'm not going to be the positive, happy person that you're used to. It has nothing to do with you. There's nothing wrong with the company. I'm not, I am going through this in my life right now. And I found that just calling that out and being honest about it was really helpful, because as leaders, people are watching your reactions all the time. And especially, like you said, as a shareholder, it's like, gosh, how do you show up in a way that's still authentic, but yet is going to be supportive of the company and the changes that are going on? And I do think that is often where HR in the advisory role can be incredibly helpful. Having HR done right is the person that you can go to and say, gosh, this is I love this organization. I'm invested in this organization, but I don't like the feel right now. Like you're saying, I am struggling personally, and you're a safe person to talk to about that. And I know a lot of the roles I've played over the years as CHRO have been, okay, well, you're feeling this way. What can we do about it? How do we help get you through the dip how you're feeling about the company right now into the other side. So that trusted advisor role is one that I think often gets missed. And I think a lot of founders, leaders, shareholders need that someone just to just download what's going on and to talk about strategies for getting through the other side. So
yeah, and I think you're so right. Julie, I've got 3 really, really important questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
So I'm going to break you in gently with this one. Can you please share with us what is your favorite cheese, please?
My favorite Swiss. That's easy. That's very easy.
Oh, wow.
I've got Swiss cheese in my refrigerator now. I have crackers and cheese. I think Swiss cheese is the best. So that's very easy.
Going into Memorial Weekend, I feel a little coming on for me right there.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so we all have live streaming, our Netflix and goodness knows what else that we have going on these days. What is the worst film you've watched recently where you feel you'll never get those precious moments of your life again?
Oh gosh, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a Star Wars fan. Like I am a big time Star Wars fan. And so I have a very high bar for Star Wars related and movies. And I don't know. I feel bad. I don't want to diss on a particular movie, but there are some that are better than others. I'll just say that. There are some that I really enjoy, and there are others that I'm just like, eh.
Always a diplomat.
And I'm such a fan, it's like I absolutely love Star Wars. And one of the things that I haven't shared is that I actually have a lightsaber, and I have there's actually a Star Wars combat league here in the States, and I have participated in that. So I have all the gear. I'm terrible at it, but that is one of this fall when my daughter is launched and goes to school, I plan on participating more in lightsaber combat. So that is, again, I took that a really geeky turn, but that's has to do with my Star Wars fandom. So,
Julie, thank you for sharing that, because I know that about you. And I wasn't going to share that unless you did. I am so pleased you did. It's such a brilliant part of who you are. And yes, cheese, Tracy.
Yeah, again, I'm very mild. Yeah, exactly. Mainstream, mild. That's me.
And then we have the saber combat, which I just think is brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant. Tell me more about these lightsabers before I go into the final question with you. Is it like, do they make noises?
They do.
I know.
And they do light up, and it's a very specific battle. Yeah. Okay. People are commenting on this, but it is a very specific lightsaber because you don't want it to break when you're battling. And it's kind of like fencing. It's somewhere between fencing and longsword. So I have an actual fencing helmet. I've got protective gear, and it's a touch. So it's to touch. So you get a point if you touch. So I've never done anything like that in my life, and I am just enjoying and geeking out on it completely. So.
Well, and so you should, because I think it's genuinely, I think it's absolutely awesome. And I know that we'll be catching up in person soon. And when we do, I just need to find out more about it.
Yes, I will share photos. Yes.
Amazing. And that's why I love these shows, because you learn so much about the person. right?
Yes,
It's great.
yes, exactly. Kind of our hidden skills and and hidden nerdiness. So that's again, I love working with nerds, and I am a nerd. So it's like that's one of the one of the reasons why I think professional services is such a good fit for me. So
is it enough for me to say go forth and be proud?
yes, exactly. May the force be with you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my last question is, so I'm a massive war baby. I love being on it, in it, or under it. So this is a very obvious question to everyone I ask, which is, when you are preparing for vacation and holiday,
Yes.
and packing your flotation device, because obviously we all do, what is your flotation device of choice, Julie?
Flotation. I have done a lot of floating on inner tubes. So down the river or in a artificial, those artificial rivers that they have sometimes at water parks. So
Yes.
I'd say inner tube. I'd say inner tube. So for sure.
Love it.
Yes. Although I have to wear a lot of sunscreen. I get sunburn really easy. So so I do limit my exposure a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I do too. And I've learnt my lesson in Denver, but never mind. Julie, you have been such a guest today. For anyone who wants to in touch with you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Sure. My email address is julie@thieltalentstrategy.com, and it's THIEL. That's thieltalentstrategy.com. I also have a bookings link and my profile for my LinkedIn profile. So that's also an easy way to schedule time with me and chat. So those are two great ways to get a hold of me.
Julie, thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you.
you've been a fabulous business club member for some time. I know
Thank
we've got
you.
other
It's been so
clubbers on
fun.
the call.
So I recommend it.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the business club to anyone that's been, especially, my story is I was in corporate for years and made the switch, decided it was time for a change and time to build my own business, and being a part of this community and working with you has made a huge difference in my experience going on my own, because I don't feel like I'm on my own. I feel like I've got my own business, but I'm backed up by you and all the fabulous business club members out there. So it's a great way to gain confidence and support as you take that step.
Julie, thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to say, what a great conversation. Thank you for being a fabulous guest, and thank you for all you do. I was really excited today because, if you're saving even 3 companies in the next 3 $1 million a year, what a big difference and impact you can make. So for anyone watching either today live or on the recording, please reach out to Julie. She shared exactly the impact and difference she can make to your business. She's also just a fabulous human being. Why wouldn't you want a Julie T in your life? Just saying. And on that note, it's goodbye for me, and it's goodbye from Julie.
Thank you.